This week's Parashá Vaikrá, begins a new Jumash Vaikrá, the third of the 5 books of Moses. It deals with the korbanot, the sacrifices that we bring to the tabernáculo, to the Templo. One of the types of the sacrifices that is discussed at length is the sin offering. If a person sins without knowing, vishgagá, then he is to bring a korban chatat to the mishkan, to the mikdash. The first verse of this portion of this week's Torah reading says, "Nefesh ki techta bishgagá," if a soul sins without knowing. But then it goes on to enumerate different souls, and each one of the different souls has actually different laws regarding the sin offering that he must bring. It begins, "Im hakohen hamashiach yechta vishgagá." If the high priest, the anointed priest, sins, then his sin offering is such and such. Then it goes on to say that if the Kol Adat Yisrael, if the whole congregation of Israel, which means the high court, the supreme court of Israel, yishgu, make a mistake in their judgment, and they teach that something which is actually forbidden and very severe avirah, transgression, they permit it, then they also have to bring a sin offering. And then the third category is asher nasiechta, if the prince, meaning the king of the people, sins, then he has also a special sin offering to bring. And finally, the fourth level is a simple soul, nefesh achat me'am haaretz. If a simple individual soul sins, then his sin offering is such and such. So actually there is first a verse that says in general, nefesh ki techta bishgagá, that all souls are under one general category of having to bring a sin offering if they sin without knowledge of their sin. Then afterwards they learn that they actually had performed a sin. And then it goes on to enumerate these 4 levels, beginning with the high priest and the supreme court, then the king, and finally an individual. When we study the Torah and contemplate its meaning and its inner teaching for us, according to the way of the Baal Shem Tov, that everything the Torah pertains to each one of us in every situation of our lives, in every place, in every time. So all of these different categories, actually we have to find them within ourselves. Meaning that every person in himself also has a spark of the high priest, and he has a spark of the congregation, of the entire congregation, meaning the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court. And he has also a spark of the king, a kingly quality within his soul. And he's also a simple individual Jew. The fact that each soul should find all of these 4 categories within himself, and when he sins, any sin that he does, anything that a person does wrong, without knowledge, involuntarily, he does something wrong, he has to understand that actually his inner high priest has begun to sin, and then his inner supreme court has continued to sin, and then his inner king has continued to sin, until finally he, as a simple individual Jew, has committed a sin. If he has this conscience, that is the way to bring the offering and to atone and to rectify the deep psychological, unconscious source of the sin. So what does it mean? It means that first we have to see in ourselves the high priest. What is the high priest? Kohen HaMashiach, the anointed priest. What does he mean? The high priest is an inspired teacher. The priest is to teach the people the Torah, but he's the high priest. He's anointed with the oil, which gives him the special divine inspiration to teach. That's one function of the high priest. The second important function of the high priest is that he atones for us, and he has all of us in mind. And when he does the service in the temple, his service is atoning for us. What does that mean now? That means that a person, an individual that feels all of the pain of the Jewish people, of each individual, prays very, very deeply for each one. And because of his prayer, because of his service, he brings both atonement and alleviation to all of the suffering of the Jewish people. These are the two basic functions of the high priest: to teach with inspiration and to pray for the people, to atone for the people. If I sin, the beginning of my sin is something went wrong in my inner high priest. I was not connected enough. I was not inspired enough. That's the beginning of sin. The second stage of sin is the Supreme Court. What does it mean that I have a Supreme Court within me? To have a Supreme Court is a system of a judgmental system to judge what is right and what is wrong, to tell myself what is right and what is wrong, and to tell others also, to instruct others what is right and what is wrong. If something goes wrong in that inner system of judgment, of knowing what is right and what is wrong, I make a mistake. Something which is wrong, I say that it's okay, it's right. That's the second stage of the inner sin of the soul. Then comes the third stage, which is my function as a leader. Every Jew and every soul has a function to lead others. That is his kingly quality. If I lead others in the wrong way, which is also has to do with giving each person his mission, trying to instruct and saying that this person should be appointed to this particular position, that's what a king does, and another person should be appointed to another position. If I also make a mistake and go wrong and do something wrong in my leadership quality, that's called that my king has sinned. What is the common denominator of all of these three first levels? It is that it all relates to the community, to my responsibility to the Jewish people, to the whole world. I have a responsibility to be a high priest. I have a responsibility to be a supreme court. I have a responsibility to be a king. There's all sin, even there's a sin just between me and God. But all sin has to do because of lack of assuming, with bitul, with selflessness, assuming and functioning properly as responsible for the world around me. And it has these three levels to it: the high priest, the Supreme Court, and then the king. And if something goes wrong in these three levels, actually it begins all from the high priest, from that inspiration and that feeling connected and that praying for everyone, for the whole Jewish people, for the whole world, for redemption, for Mashiach to come. If something goes wrong at the beginning, then it continues to go wrong through all the levels of the soul until the individual at the end commits a sin. That's what we learn from the order of the different persona that's seen here, that it's all within myself. It's all under the general category of nefesh kitech bishgagá. Once more, the first verse just as a soul, meaning that every soul has all of these levels and dimensions to it. So may Hashem help us that we rectify, we bring atonement to our souls by recognizing that we have within ourselves the high priest and the Supreme Court and the king. And if we rectify all of those functions within ourselves, then we will not sin, and then redemption will come to the world.